Hello, hello. This is Moddy Supersonic on a Friday night here in St. Louis, Missouri. And this is the Moddy podcast. And I'm solo tonight because I'm gonna go out on a limb and just explain to you about music, modern music as we have it today, how it evolved from the beginning, not so much of the 60s, but it really did happen in the 70s, in particular, over 50 years ago, was it 1976? So it's 50 years. So yeah, music actually did explode in the year 1976 thanks to the people of the United Kingdom known as punk rock. Yeah. So I was talking to you about how the Beatles started everything with and the Who with the whole mod movement in the 60s, which carried on over to America, which also brought about the Beach Boys and the New York sound, the Greenwich Village sound, of course, with Love and Spoonful, the Birds. Um, and then it eventually became more acidy rock. People started becoming more hippie-ish and started playing more guitar solos, heavy guitar solos, and it progressed into more bar heavy rock sound into like Led Zeppelin and all that. And you got all the psychedelic sounds with like Pink Floyd, and there were a lot of other bands that were. Well, there were a lot of bands in the 60s. And there were just as many bands in 1976 that just popped out of nowhere. But I think there were more bands that came out of the punk movement in 1976. But yeah, in the 60s, there were just as much. I mean, you could go to the record stores, search the bins, and you'll find just bands you'll never hear of or ever will hear of unless you just look and search. And now we got Spotify, and most of that stuff is there now. Not all the mixes of the. I mean, there's several good stuff from the '80s, like '80s remixes of certain bands, which I'll get into later. During the big house, uh, techno, kind of synth music, which became big in the '80s. I'll get into that too, but but yeah, that was bothering me. But yeah, well, it all started in 1976 after the whole glam movement exploded with David Bowie and T Rex and the New York Dolls started like bringing back fashion and style into music in the early 70s. I mean, they created an androgynous look. Look at aka David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, um, David Johansen from the New York Dolls, all those other guys in the band. They all look like girls. So yeah, everyone wanted to look androgynous and pretty much rocked out at the same time. Personality Crisis, New York Dolls, Changes, David Bowie, Rebel Rebel, It's on Your Dress, Your Face is a Mess, Hot Tramp, I Love You So. I mean, he's talking about guys and girls, so it was all gender bender type of deals going on with the whole glam movement. And all of a sudden, 1976 happened. A guy named Malcolm McLaren opened a shop with Vivian Westwood called Saks on the King's Road in London. And pretty much they had kids from London coming in wanting to make themselves up with a new look. They sold like bondage gear and stuff made out of like garbage bags because there was a big like dustman strike going on, so the garbage piled up in London, and so yeah, if you're gonna throw it away and no one's gonna pick it up, you might as well wear it. That's what they were saying. So, and then if you probably saw the Danny Boyle movie Pistol, they he probably made the most accurate depiction of what came to be from that shop, which Malcolm McLaren opened. And before that, he was managing the New York Dolls before he opened up the shop. And in the movie, he tells you like, okay, I'm gonna pass you the guitar players Gibson, Les Paul to you, Steve Jones, Mr. Steve Jones, who would later on form the Sex Pistols with Paul Cook and Glenn Matlock. And then they eventually found their lead singer, John Lydon, and they formed the Sex Pistols. And everyone will agree on me on this from the punk movement back in the 70s. Whoever grew up in the 70s and 80s, they'll tell you Sex Pistols started everything. They started the explosion like 50 years ago, 1976. It's 2026 now. It's the 50-year anniversary of punk. And I'd like to share my experience growing up in that time. But the thing is, in 1976, I didn't know anything about punk rock. I mean, I was only like 3, but I started paying attention to music, which was on the radio at the time. And St. Louis, were radio stations like I started paying in 1978. Um, get even, even uh, and they Hello. Sorry for the gap in with the technical difficulties, but this happened the last time. Some force is just like prohibiting me from telling you the truth about music. But yes, it's 1976. It started. Now it's 50 years later, 2026. So yeah, we're, we're hold on. So okay, I'm just checking the studio settings again. But the thing is, it's 50-year anniversary because a band called the Sex Pistols started the whole genre of alternative and punk, new wave, goth, and all that. So I just want to give my explanation of what I wanted to do tonight. But the thing is, technical difficulties. But yeah, I just want to celebrate what was going on in my youth and how it transformed me. This big revolution that started in 1976, the whole punk movement, and they didn't really reach St. Louis in the late 70s. I mean, when I was telling you about how I was listening to radio, St. Louis local radio, and we had uh, we had a we had like a couple of stations. Like one was KC 95. One was on the AM dial KXOK, and then we had KSLQ, if everyone remembers that, KADI 96. Well, it was mostly like disco, a blend of disco and classic rock that was being played. I mean, I remember hearing "Bad Out of Hell," like Ellen Foley and Meatloaf singing "2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad." "Miss You" with the Rolling Stones, and then a lot of the Bee Gees, um, and even a lot of songs from the Grease soundtrack, and that was that. And so, pretty much, I grew up on that whole sound, and then I remember being introduced to the Beatles, but they weren't that popular then because they already broke up. So, and then listening to the Monkees a lot. These were like vinyl records that were in the family bin. So pretty much listen to the radio, and then all of a sudden I started listening to the singles of Wings at that time because Paul McCartney came out with um, McCartney 2, I think, which had Coming Up on it. Then John Lennon came out with Double Fantasy, and then George Harrison came about after the assassination of John Lennon with all those years ago. Still got the 45 single to that. But also in that time, ELO was popular with Xanadu all over the world. Magic with Olivia Newton John. I'm Alive. That pretty much mixed disco and pretty much guitar rock. Wasn't part of the punk movement, but from 1980, 81, I remember also, okay, my first experience with punk rock probably was listening to Heart of Glass by Blondie. That was big on the radio in 1979, and it just had that disco sound to it, but it had punk lyrics and a kind of they had the punk look, alternative look, which just like it impressed the hell out of me when I saw them like on the midnight special. Blondie, they just had that look, that smart look, like they came out straight out of the '60s. And so yeah, I wanted to show you how probably Blondie exposed the masses using American Bandstand, Midnight Special. They showed America what new wave and punk rock from England was all about. And later, the American kids, some of them caught on, namely the scenes from like New York, Los Angeles, and even Chicago. And it started like a small punk rock movement in LA with bands like Fear, who eventually went on Saturday Night Live because of John Belushi. He loved them so much. And then you got from New York, you got of course Blondie, Talking Heads, the Ramones, of course. I didn't really know about the Ramones yet in 1980, but I remember Blondie and the let's see, Talking Heads. I didn't know about them till I would say 1983, 82. But yeah, pretty much was Blondie and Talking Heads, Ramones. And then you got the whole CBGB. Yeah, CBGBs became big in the late 70s. I wasn't aware of it, but they produced people the whole Blondie Ramones scene with Richard Hell from I think he's from the Voidoids, but who else? And Stib Baders, another unknown punk rocker, but he was kind of a punk legend out of LA. So I'm not gonna name every band, but that came out of '76 because there's just so much. I mean, if you want to know what came out of London and the UK from 1976, all you got to do is just go to my Spotify account on under Anthony Villarama, and there's a playlist that says mod punk oi ska hardcore. I mean, that's just I wasn't aware of those bands, but I pretty much did research in the past 20 years, 30 years about what was going on in the whole UK during that time. And I mean, that those were all the bands that were influenced by the Sex Pistols in the UK, and most of them never made it big in the USA. But SNL had a very big influence on exposing the whole punk rock thing. They even had the first skinhead band. I wouldn't say a skinhead band, but a ska band with skinheads in it. They were called the Specials. Everyone knows who the Specials. They were the first skinheads to be on TV in America. 79. I didn't see it though. They were on SNL. And so 1981 music was kind of like steady. It wasn't it was kind of yacht rockish. I mean, Air Supply was getting big. They were an Aussie band, very yacht rockish. It wasn't called yacht rock, but very easy listening was becoming big, and Christopher Cross was getting big, and then you got Daryl Hall and John Oates got really big again. Well, they started to get big. They weren't that known. They weren't actually known in the late '70s. That like, except for apart from Rich Girl, and then Kiss on My List came out like around '81. They just started putting out the hits again for the next 6 years in the '80s, and then you had Air Supply. You had Rick Springfield. He was another big influence on the whole scene in America because he was on General Hospital playing Dr. Noah Drake. And then you got pretty much the whole I would say like the first one of the first techno songs to come out was Soft Cell with Tainted Love. That was a very good techno song that got big in the US, 1982. And then Don't You Want Me by the Human League. That's another one. But they were like an off. They are all influenced by punk. 1976, Sex Pistols. I would say the big top three bands of 1976 explosion from punk from London and in England would first the Sex Pistols, two the Clash, three the Jam. All three of them somehow made it to the U.S., but the Clash became the biggest punk rock band from that scene to make it in America. And yeah, they hung out. Mick Jones hung out in St. Louis in the early '80s, late '70s, because he was with Ellen Foley for a while, the actress, the singer from Meatloaf, doing 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad and all that. And so, yeah, the Clash became big during London Calling in 1980 for a bit, but not as big. But they were on Fridays. They played a lot of their songs from London Calling, and 1982, yeah, MTV became really big. Cable TV became legal to having everyone's home, and so everyone was plugged into MTV, and MTV just played all the a lot of stuff from England, a lot of new stuff, not the punk stuff, but just underground bands you'll never remember, but they had that new wave sound. Bands like the Producers, What She's Got, What I Don't Got, stuff like that. And they introduced Split Ends from New Zealand. They were a new wave band who eventually became Crowded House and shaped Neil Finn's career up to today. And Clash became really big because they released their last album with Mick Jones in 1982, Combat Rock. And I remember as a 9-year-old when I was watching MTV for the first time, I saw Paul Weller for the first time with the Jam doing a town called Mouse. I was just like, wow, this guy looks like he's from the Beatles. He even has the same haircut. I'm like, that's so cool. Because I had a Beatle cut during that time, and everyone gave me shit for having the haircut. But I was just like, oh, there's someone on MTV that looks like the Beatles, has a Beatle cut. So, yeah. And then we got so I just want to move on. Just want to tell you that after the whole MTV explosion, everyone just became obsessed with MTV and the new wave sound, techno sound. Bands like Tears for Fears came out 1985, Depeche Mode 1985, Simple Minds 1985. Duran became so big in 1983. Big band. Who else? Pretty much that whole MTV sound became big, and eventually it all exploded in '85 with Live Aid, July 13, 1985. But after July 13, 1985, everything started to die down. So I started high school, middle school, and 7th grade, and I just wanted to find my identity. And I'd like to introduce you to New Order, the band from Manchester that no one knew about, but everyone knows about them now. They started off as Joy Division, and they went into they started in Manchester as Joy Division because of Sex Pistols and the whole punk movement. They wanted to become punks like the Sex Pistols, and so they started putting out records that resembled goth. They were probably the ones who started goth, but they don't call themselves goth. They consider themselves dark wave. But yeah, they came out. Singer killed himself, hung himself in the 1980, yeah, around 1980, 81. Then Bernard Sumner took over in the band on vocals and guitar. Peter Hook on bass, Steve Morris on drums, Jillian Gilbert was added in as a keyboardist, so they got into the whole techno sound, which could be like they could have been like they were influenced by the whole German techno sound of let's see in Germany in the early 70s. No one knew about them, but people in whole UK were aware of these German kraut bands, and they were influenced by them, especially Joy Division, Ian Curtis. And pretty much in 1985, I heard New Order, Love Vigilantes, and it just changed my whole world around. And the other band that just made me want to become punk and new wave and a rocker was Echo and the Bunnymen. Those two bands had the same style of hair, like with this bouffant, short side. I still sport it now. I call myself a mod, but I'm also a rocker. But that whole style was more mostly influenced by Teddy Boys and all that. And so up to this day, I'm still influenced by those two bands. New Order from Manchester, England, and Echo and the Bunnymen from Liverpool. I could tell you about Echo and the Bunnymen. They started out in 1978, also influenced by the whole punk movement from London. And they started out in the scene. It wasn't they weren't part of the Manchester scene, but they were part of the Liverpool scene. The popular club where all the punk bands played was called Eric's, I believe, and Manchester. I think I forgot the venue that was popular there, but there was the Sex Pistols played there, and that made uh, New Order or Joy Division like they went there to watch the whole concert, and they were just influenced, and they wanted to form Joy Division, so they did. And well, back to Echo and the Bunnymen. They started to they started at Eric's, and it was Ian McCulloch on vocals, Will Sargent on guitar, and Les Patterson on bass. And they didn't have a drummer yet, so they got a drum machine that was called the Echo, some brand called Echo. So they called themselves Echo and the Bunnymen because they didn't have a drummer. So there you have it, 1978. You heard the first album, Crocodiles. Sounds very punkish, a little bit of new wave touch to it, and yeah. So basically, those two bands shaped my whole identity in 1986, 85, 87. I wasn't really into the Smiths, but they were big. They were heavy influence on me. I would say they had the whole rocker look, the font, the short hair, tapered fade, like like what I sport now. They all that haircut was just no one had it in during that time, and I was like dying to look like that because no one looked like that in St. Louis. And you got a lot of handsome points if you did have that look. So that's what I noticed. People started to notice me when I had that look. So of course they wore the mod suits. They wore the jacket, tie, shirt, trousers, the mod suit, pretty much. But not the hair down, but the hair up, the fade, the funk. That was that was the whole great look. Late '80s. If you wanted to look good and impress people, and people were impressed when you looked like that. I could tell you from experience. Yeah, I look. That's how I looked. But I like to share you. Okay, this song by New Order totally like influenced me and just brings back memories. And it's called Ceremony. and I still have my 1987, 86 vinyl copy of it, the 12-inch of Ceremony. I bought it. I'll tell you where I bought it. I bought it in Wash U in St. Louis. At back then, they used to sell vinyl in their bookstore, which was pretty cool. They had a radio station, K Word. Yeah, I couldn't really get it, but yeah. Hey, Corey, what's going on? See, dog. Yeah, so yeah, I like to share you the actual vinyl of Ceremony from New Order, and it's in mint condition, and we'll take a few minutes to listen to it because it's classic. I mean, inspired like my life. But here, we'll put it on. This is New Order. Listen to that, Steve Morris. Bernard Sumner on guitar. Peter Hook on bass. Jillian Gilbert on rhythm guitar, I guess. So yeah, that was Ceremony by New Order. Originally recorded by Joy Division, but there's only one copy of that song that actually with Ian Curtis singing that, and it was a live version. And they had a problem, technical difficulties like we're having tonight. Whenever I go on solo, there's technical difficulties. There's some force trying to stop me from broadcasting my thoughts, but that's what happens. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's Pandora's box, the one I opened back in 1988, and just brought me to my situation right now. But I'm gonna close it for good. Things are gonna change, like Rick Buckler said in British Rock, the documentary, which you should see. The British Rock documentary. It's on TV. It's called British Rock. Just look for it. So yeah, so basically that New Order, everyone knew when I was in high school that New Order was like my favorite band, and no one knew who they were. And then I was just like, just wait, they're gonna get big. They weren't that big, but they made it to like they crossed over to like this video show on Channel 4. I don't know if it's Friday Night Videos or New Grooves, but they made it on NBC late 80s and with True Faith. I used to think that today would never come, and they eventually got bigger and bigger as the 80s progressed and into the 90s. But that was considered alternative music, not punk. But like I told you, they started as a punk band with Warsaw and Joy Division. Unfortunately, the singer had to he hung himself. Ian Curtis, rest in peace. But so you'll see them at the end of the year, 2026. They'll be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. I can't wait to see. It's gonna Oasis is going to be inducted also, and Sade, one of my favorite early '80s MTV bands. Like I said, she was part of the whole MTV scene, and see back to the other band that influenced me, Echo and the Bunnymen. No, they played MTV played them in 1984 when Ocean Ring came out. That's when everyone started to notice them, but it wasn't until 1985 when Bring On the Dancing Horses came out. Blew my mind. 1985, about September or August of that year. Didn't get the 12-inch till like December of 1985, but the first mix that I listened to was the 12-inch mix, not the single that was released on the Pretty in Pink compilation original soundtrack in 1986 spring. And uh it just the lyrics, the drums, the 12-string guitar, the bass line, the lyrics, just I don't know, something about it caught me, and it still lives in me today. I'll play it soon, but I still have the 1985 pressing of Bring On the Dancing Horses, the 12-inch. But I'll play that in a bit. I'm going to tell you a background of Echo and the Bunnymen first, but it just after hearing that, I had to get all the albums. Like I immediately got Ocean Rain because it had the Killing Moon on it. Well, before that, I got Songs to Learn to Sing. It was basically a greatest hits album, but it had the Killing Moon on it and Seven Seas. I remember KCLC, Lindenwood College, played that song all the time in 1984. They played Seven Seas and Killing Moon. KYMC was another big punk alternative underground sort of left of the dial station you could listen to in St. Louis to get all the good new wave alternative hits at that time. So many to speak of because, like I said, in 1976, the big three bands punk, Sex Pistols, The Clash, The Jam, just they opened up a new sound and opportunity for kids my age, older, a little 10 years older than me, to like start their own bands, and this is what happened. Just exploded. Everything just exploded. But and then I'm 1987. There was a big tour. It was sponsored by 120 Minutes, which was a punk alternative show on Sunday nights on MTV right after the Young Ones. 2 hours of alternative music from England or America, bands that just had to be heard. They were played. They never played it on the radio much unless you listen to like probably KYMC, St. Louis, but there are just so many bands that came out of punk and alternative. Smiths, of course, they were one of the biggest. They were probably just as big as Echo and the Bunnymen and New Order with my crowd. No one, like I said, no, only like people who were artists and music aficionados, or who are people who were into the whole modern, the rock, Teddy Boy look. They got the whole picture and they wanted to listen to that stuff. But I'm gonna like I just wanted to share what happened in '87, summer '87. Yeah, '87. There was a big tour, and I don't. The promoters somehow brought together New Order, Echo and the Bunnymen, and Gene Loves Jezebel. They were more. They were like Gene Loves Jezebel were like a. They were like a guitar band, but alternative, kind of a mix with glam in it. They pretty much look like the New York Dolls from the '80s. I remember Peter Hook was making fun of them on a Star Hits article. I remember reading Star Hits a lot. It was like the equivalent of punk and new wave and alternative reading for people that didn't want to read the Rolling Stone magazine, because Rolling Stone magazine was just all about contemporary music. Growing ups, as we called it, read that stuff. People my age who were into like punk and alternative and the whole new wave stuff. We wanted to read Star Hits and keep up with the news and the tours, and buy the T-shirts, the band T-shirts, Music Aid. If anyone remembers that, I must have spent I remember spending a lot of money just ordering PIL T-shirts, New Order, Sex Pistols, Jesus and Mary Chain T-shirts, just to show our whole like artistic identity, underground. Just show everyone that we're cool, and this is the future. And look at now. Everyone looks like that now, but they don't understand punk, alternative, goth. It all came from my crowd, and the people who were 10 years older than me. You just brought a whole look. You could say Vivian Westwood probably did so too, but it all came from us. If you like that look now, that looks very androgynous and very smart, sexy, came from us. That's what millennials, Gen Z, they'll never know. They'll never get it. It came from us. So back to Echo and the Bunnymen. They toured with New Order and Gene Loves Jezebel, but New Order and Echo and the Bunnymen were quite friendly together, and they know each other from the tours over in England, UK, and they're because, like I said, Echo's from Liverpool and New Order's from Manchester, which produced like a lot of bands during that time, during the alternative, punk alternative, new wave, synth rock times. And so pretty much, yeah, if you look at, if you just study me, if you're trying to study me, like my hairstyle, my whole get up, it's all because of New Order and Echo and the Bunnymen. Not so much, a little bit of Paul Weller and Style Council, but yeah, I didn't really get into the Style Council till like 1990, 91. But I'll do another podcast about that, about this Paul Weller and Style Council, how they influenced me. But before Paul Weller, it was Bernard Sumner and Ian McCulloch, Peter Hook, Stephen Morris, Julian Gilbert, Les Patterson, and Will Sargent, and Pete DeFritas. I mean, well, now the person who wanted to get the drums was Pete DeFritas. He's the one that wanted me to like actually go out and play drums. I even got a drum set just like his, Tama Swing Star. Saw him twice in concert, 1988, early 1988, and then May of 1980. First at Northwestern, like early 1988, and then at the Fox Theater in St. Louis in May of 1988. You'll never see anything like that. They just blew my mind away, and never saw New Order in concert yet. It's a shame. I saw Peter Hook last year, but I didn't, never, New Order never came to St. Louis. Peter Hook was the first remnant of that whole band, Joy Division and New Order, to come to St. Louis last year in May. It's a shame. Thing is, they'll probably never get back together either because Peter Hook and Bernard Sumner don't get along anymore. They were the ones who were childhood friends, 1970s. They were suede heads over in Manchester. So, yeah. So, and then pretty much Bernard Sumner from New Order, after watching him on MTV and with his videos, True Faith and all that, I saw like a Gibson that he played on the Perfect Kiss video, and I saw a translucent Fender. I think it was it was a black and white Fender Stratocaster. The thing is, I wanted to get a Strat just like his. But lo and behold, I couldn't afford a Fender back then. My parents couldn't get that, but I got a Fender replica. It was called a Cortez, and it was translucent. I still got it. I just got it back a couple of years ago, but I still have it. It's a translucent body of a Strat, something like Nile Rodgers would have played on, which I think he still does play on a translucent Fender Stratocaster. And then I got the guitar, and I began taking I began learning. I never took lessons, but I learned guitar from a book that my mom had stored in her acoustic guitar, which was a Alvarez acoustic guitar. So I learned on an Alvarez acoustic guitar, which was made by the St. Louis Music Company, St. Louis Music, early 70s, out of McMurray Music. If anyone remembers McMurray Music, that's where I got my drum set from, their famous yearly invitational sale. One year I got a Yamaha distortion pedal for my Cortez electric guitar. And then next year I got the Tama Swing Star on sale. It was like $800. Can you believe that? And with the cymbals, it probably came up to be about 1,000. So it was crazy back then. I don't know. I don't understand how that musical equipment back then was just overpriced and people could afford them back then. I don't. I guess that's why no one could afford a Fender back then, but now they can today, or a Gibson. No one had a Gibson back then. You were like special if you had a Gibson in the 80s. But if you're just a kid growing up in St. Louis, you had to settle for like the knockoffs and of all the name brands. I mean, you look it's a total shit show today. Everyone has like Gibsons, Fenders, Gretsch, all of them. I had to wait 20 years so I could like afford them. I still can't afford them. Ah. And so pretty much, if you want to study the whole British movement from the three best bands that come out of the punk movement from England, 1976, the Jam, Sex Pistols, the Clash. Just go to my Spotify account and listen to the mod punk, oi, ska, hardcore archive. You'll learn. You'll learn. And then I got a volley for, I would say, from 1979 to 91. I got a 4-part volume that covers those years pretty much on Spotify on my account. Check those out. 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes all the way to 2000, but it tells you what was going on in my head from 79 to when I graduated in 91. All the stuff that I remember. It didn't have to be alternative or anything or punk, but a lot of it had underground punk music on it and new wave. It even has it has Echo and the Bunnymen, New Order, Joy Division, Gene Loves Jezebel. Just I, I'll tell you a story about the one of the brothers from Gene Loves Jezebel. I remember like after seeing him in concert, like in 2000, I don't know, probably 10. After the brothers like separated, Mike and Jay separated. I mean, I wanted to see them because it reminded me of the whole New Order Echo tour. And so I saw Michael's Gene Loves Jezebel because those two they're feuding again on Facebook. They're like, Michael is totally pissed off at Jay Ashton, and I had to put in my 2 cents. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry for, I know you hate James Stevenson, who's in Jay Ashton's Gene Loves Jezebel, but I told him I just add various musicians to my friends list on Facebook, but yeah, you totally got pissed off at me because he was on my friends list, so he didn't reply, but we used to joke around on Facebook. He would always like joke with me, like make fun of me. It was hilarious. Like I would say, I'd like put a caption on, like, I'm in a hockey game right now. It's really cold. And he's like, that's how ice works. Shit like that. Smart ass remarks, but yeah. But if you listen to Emotional Love by Gene Loves Jezebel, they quote Anarchy in the UK by Sex Pistols. I know what I want and I know how to get it. So come on, let's get it. I got the motion of love. I got the motion of love. Well, yeah. So yeah, just bringing back memories from 1987 from that big triumphant tour, the big trio, Gene Loves Jezebel, Echo and the Bunnymen, and New Order. So yeah, if you really want to learn, if you want to learn a lot more about New Order, watch 24 Hour Party People, Control, and read their books. Peter Hook has his own um, autobiographical novel. So does Bernard Sumner. They're both good. Bernard and Hookies or Peter Hook, they do a good job at um, telling what was going on during those days and what they were doing. Good read. So we're almost to an hour, but I hope I'll for the next podcast, I'll on the next solo podcast, I'll tell you about how I became more mod in soul influence and jazz influence in the '90s. But this is how I evolved in the '80s because of 1976 of punk. It's because of the Sex Pistols, the Jam, and the Clash. But more so in the '80s because I was exposed more to New Order and Echo and the Bunnymen. But I'm gonna play you "Bring On the Dancing Horses" right now. Made of stone, Charlie Clark, no way home. Bring on the dancing horses, headless and all alone. Shiver and sing the words, every lie you've heard. First I'm gonna make it, and then I'm gonna break it till it falls apart. Fixing all the faking and the shaking while I'm breaking your brittle heart. Every star, all alone, sinking inside, skin and bone. Bring on the dancing horses, wherever they may roam. Shiver and say the word, every lie is heard. First I'm gonna make it, then I'm gonna break it till it falls apart. Hating all the faking and shaking while I'm breaking your brittle heart. Jimmy Brown,
Shiver and say the words every lie you've heard. First I'm gonna make it, then I'm gonna break it till it falls apart. Hating all the faking and shaking while you're breaking my grip so hard. Grip so hard. Grip so hard. And all a little more. Ooh.
Okay. Bring on the Dancing Horses. Echo and the Bloody Men. 1985. Back when they thought they lost Pete DeFreitas as their drummer because he was going aloof, going to New Orleans and partying too much. But hey, we lost him in 1989, and I don't know, something about that guy made me want to play drums. And the way he looked so cool. I think he was a Spaniard out of Port of Spain, Trinidad. So yeah. But listen to the last verses of Bring on the Dancing Horses. I don't know where he got this. Ian McCulloch. Bring on the new Messiah, wherever he may roam. Bring on the new Messiah, wherever he may roam. I was looking back then. I was just, those words hit me back then. I was just like, where's the new Messiah? I'm going through hell. My life, I'm not fitting in life. Where is this new Messiah? Lately, like in 2000, when they started playing Bring on the Dancing Horses again, Echo and the Bunnymen, Ian Mac would say, bring on the new Messiah, wherever he may roam. Bring on the Messiah, wherever he may roam. I will roam. That's what he said. I will roam. Ian McCulloch is the new Messiah. Maybe he is. I could be the new Messiah. I saw that in a dream. Might be. I'm not saying I am. I may be. Okay, but I'm going to end this podcast, which was kind of sketchy at the beginning. I don't know what was going on. Someone was trying to shut me down. And it happened when I was trying to talk about the mods on episode 5 or whatever it was. But I will continue this discussion next time solo. I don't know if it's going to be the next actual solo podcast, but I'll tell you my history about the whole mod and acid jazz movement, how I got into it in 1990, 91 and all that. Changed my world. But I could also tell you about how cyberpunk ministry changed, kind of changed me for about 3 years from like 1989, 1988, 89 to 90, 91. So I'll probably talk about that at one time. But hey, yeah. So remember this. This is a beautiful cover with Echo and the Money Men Bring on the Dancing Horses. Still got this in mint condition, bought in December of 1985. Okay, this is Moddy, aka Anthony Villarama. Tony Villa, if you want to shorten it. I just decided you could call me Tony Villa now. But Moddy Supersonic, Anthony Villarama, Tony Villa. Check out my Spotify account. I put it's on the links here on this channel, but um, yeah, the drill is like this video. I'm sure you'll want to watch it over and over. Subscribe to this channel, youtube.com at Snap Innovations. And I hope you enjoy your weekend. And I hope you enjoy this podcast that I just produced. And despite the technical distractions, I hope it works out for the benefit of everyone. But peace. I'm out. Next time, and we will meet again. So shed your skin. Let's get started. Cheers.